So, before we begin putting the computer together, I need to remove my old components. Because my video card and sound card are compatible and almost certainly should still be working, I can just reuse those. The same goes with the hard drive and the CD drive. The floppy, as I stated before, is likely to go out. The fan, that's just a little dinky-sized one, 80 millimeters supposedly. But I need to disconnect everything in here. Before we start, touch the power supply to ground yourself or discharge any static electricity. Or at least that's what I usually do. This is the power supply. As you can tell, it's got the switch on the back. I put it on the zeros and then unplug it and do all the other stuff. I've disconnected all the other components too, as you can kind of tell. But that's basically what I need to do. So I'm going to need a screwdriver for that. And there's a screwdriver. 4 screws. However, this orientation is not a good one for taking the power supply out, because remove the screws, it's going to fall and hit the motherboard. Solution? Rotate it. This way, when it falls, because this direction here is down, this is where down is, that will fall on pretty much nothing and be a very short distance fall. But that's basically my new power supply that I got. Because my previous one was squealing, making this high-pitched squealing sound. So, let's disconnect that. Okay, and sometimes what I usually like doing is making use of my feet. So, of course it's kind of hard to do this and hold the camera at the same time. So, just get the screwdriver in there and just unscrew. Of course, this is my old system. Of course, keep the screws in a safe spot. Remember this? Discard them over there. Of course, I don't need that. And do the same with all the others. So, now that the power supply is out, of course, this is normally how I hold things, so I have both hands available and free. So, now it's time to disconnect all these wires. And also the cards, too. But for now, I'll leave the cards in there, because I'm going to do a direct transfer from this case to the new case, once I get the motherboard installed. But, for now, let's start disconnecting everything. This one here, this one right here, that's the 24-pin connector. That one is a pain to work with. There's a little pin, though, that you use to clamp onto with both fingers and you pull out. That's how you get that one disconnected. These red things, that's the memory. Of course, if that memory should still be in working order, so I can likely sell it on eBay. Get some kind of returns on things. Kind of like what you do in the Final Fantasy games when you buy new equipment and sell your old stuff for getting the cash back. Or at least some of it anyway. This is normally a stock fan. This here is a stock fan. And all these transistors and diodes and whatever these other things are, that's all components of the motherboard. So, don't forget to disconnect everything on here. So, let's disconnect them. So with everything now disconnected, it's now time to start hooking everything up. Or at least I haven't disconnected the cards yet, or the other things that I can now no longer use. Or I haven't disconnected the floppy or the CD or the hard drive yet either. But before we get on to that, we need to get something so we can hook all this stuff up. And for that, we need to get this motherboard hooked up. Motherboard. And one of the most common things you get with pretty much everything computer nowadays is a circle. Or at least that's what I often call these things. The CD, DVD, just circle in general. But let's dig down into all this. Now, be warned, computer components are static sensitive. Ever wonder why it's in this bag? Well, it's a static shielded bag. The power supply is a great thing to be grounded by. And of course, by using your feet for touching it, you have both your hands available, which is how I'm holding my camera. So, this is basically what a motherboard looks like. Or at least brand new anyway. Just unopened in a sense. So basically it should go in here something kind of like this. That's basically how it should go in. Basically all you need to do is, see these little holes here like this? Like these? All you need to do is find those holes on the motherboard, line them up, or at least as many as possible, and then just screw it in. Basically, screw it in. You're going to need one of these things. One of these very, very common tools, you know. Yep, that's called a screwdriver. Yep, that's probably one of the most common things you'll be needing for this. But, as I'm seeing it here, this little white spot here, that's where that 24-pin connector goes into. This is for PATA, parallel ATA, and that's where things like the CD drive connect to, or the hard drive, or at least older hard drives. This is for the memory. Okay. And this here is PCI Express, this blue spot here. That's PCI Express. And that's for the video card. That's that red thing there. That's the video card, that's PCI Express. Of course, the color of this here doesn't make any difference. It's mostly used to distinguish between the various components. It's kind of like idiot proofing in a sense. And this is for PCI. That's for the sound card, at least. That one on the very bottom there, that's the sound card. Well, you can't tell it here now because it's been disconnected. But that's the sound card. And, let me see here, I'm trying to look around here. These little orange spots here, that's for SATA. However, one thing to take note of is that hard drives, those, at least the SATA hard drives, are usually 1.5 and 3 GB/S, and there's usually a jumper to separate them, or at least some models do. Mine in particular does that. For that, you'll need a tweezers, which means since I don't have them with me, I'll have to go get that out. But it's a small object, so you'll need something fine like that so you can work with them. But, let's start installing the motherboard. This is where the CPU goes, just in case you're wondering. And yes, that is a protective case over it. Leave that on there until it comes to the moment when you're installing the CPU. We'll get to that later, though. So, for now, leave that on there. I'm leaving it in this case here just so you can see how things are going. But that's basically it. You can tell the light shadowing there from the lights overhead. But basically, that's all there is.